Okay, so now let's pull into the GTA and take a look at our freehold homes because at the end of the day, our freehold stuff, more and more, you can't look at the headlines where they include all home types. Because our condo market has been so sluggish, so flooded lately, you really got to make sure that you're pulling these two apart to take a look. Even when you're talking super high level like this, they need to be separated to get a better look at it. And, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of messaging, I'd say, from the Toronto Real Estate Board and some other places talking about making sure that homes this year are still going to outpace inflation. And when we look at our year over year here, we're just hovering above that at our 2.1 now in terms of median sale price for our detached, semi-detached, and townhomes in the GTA.
Yeah, price up 2.1. It's interesting because new listings are up 50, almost 51%.
Mm-hmm.
Transaction volumes down 13.5%. Yet we still saw an uptick of 2.1 on the price, which was a little bit interesting of a stat for me, especially when you've got the termination volume 50% higher than it was last year as well. So I
Yeah.
do wonder when it comes to that year over year number of 2.1%, how much of that has to do with maybe the size of properties being sold right now. Is it more detached than it is towns and
And our
semis?
semis
Because the
there, yeah.
underlying data is suggesting more options and less sales.
Yeah, I agree. And I had a conversation the other day with someone that said, "Well, we've been building such big homes, for a long time now. Is there any influence in the fact that just your average home is that much bigger?" Right? So are we truly tracking the growth of that, or are we just seeing more and more of those homes sell every year as more of them now begin to turn over from pre-construction and stuff like that? So I think there's an element of that, but I will say that even in my neighborhood, watching and looking at the detached, we're definitely in a better spot this year than we were last year. So again, it's neighborhood specific, but at the same point, I would say that increase there probably still holds true for a lot of areas. Yeah, specifically when looking at the detached. Now, looking at your towns and semis, depending on the sales volume, I think that's another thing that might be slightly skewed because I want to have this conversation real quickly about the amount of homes that are selling above the asking price, and so you can see that here that we're up this year over year, that 15%. Um, Sorry, Matt, am I getting that right? Year over year, we're up 15%, right? Because we're now
For uplift
26.3%.
for over
Yeah.
asking, yeah, we're
Yeah,
we're
for
up
over
50.
asking. And I saw this true when I was looking at Aurora, for example, because I pulled these charts from my own areas as well. And we're up there as well in terms of the amount of homes they're selling over asking, but our sales are down so much in comparison to last year, specifically in that market. So I think when you see some of this stuff looking up, and you'll see there's a lot of people that are talking about that, at least in our echo chambers, that the percentage of homes over asking or selling is up. Well, you know what? There's always going to be those homes that will sell over the asking price. There's always going to be those A-plus homes that are on the quiet street, that back onto the ravine, that have the one floor plan that everybody likes, that buyers will line up for. And so those ones, the holding offer strategy can still work because there will be enough demand for that specific home that buyers will come out. Now, with the amount of sales volume going down, I think that these numbers are skewed because those homes are still selling, right? Those are in a down market. It's usually more of those homes that will sell than otherwise because it's a great time for a move up buyer to purchase one of those homes because their home should have held value a little bit better than the higher priced home. Now one of these comes up for sale, boom, they're going for it. So Matt, if I was going to say why these numbers are up specifically in regards to the above asking percentages, that you got to watch those. I don't think it's a true indication of what's going on, the state of the market. I think you got to look at the amount of active listings and the amount of sales that are ultimately saying if that is a viable strategy for most people. Because when we look at our terminateds, I think people are getting it wrong.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that.
Yeah. So let's keep moving on here in terms of our freehold report. And when we're looking at the bulk of where these homes are selling, in terms of our sales volume, we're seeing that between the million and 1.25 seems to be like a sweet spot for total sales volume. And then in terms of active listings, it's interesting enough, it's the price point just above that. So to me, that says that there's a lot of people are listing at that price point. they're negotiating down a little bit and buying around that 125, which again holds true to the amount of homes that are selling under the asking price for the most part.
Yeah, and what stands out to me as well, you've got your active listings by price range, 2 million plus. You've got over 1,200 properties sitting on the market, and last month there was 211 sales. Now, just so everybody knows, these stats are from January 1st up until February 11th. So it's just kind of seeing how the full year has gone, and then active listings is from January last year till now, just in case there's anything that's been sitting on the market for a long period of time. And it's something we've seen all year. There's just a lot of that high end stuff sitting out there um, that needs to kind of trickle down, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and when we look at the sales volume where the bulk is happening, it's still your detached homes, 67% of the market, townhomes coming in there at 17, semis at 15. When we look at what's active, it just makes sense. We have so many freehold detached homes out there in the GTA, but 76% of the active listings are in the detached segment currently. Okay, taking a look at active listings again. We're just talking about our freeholds, specifically our detached semi and townhomes, and you can see, like we mentioned before, it wasn't till the summer that we really turned over in terms of active listings being the highest they've been. And Matt, you and I were talking about this back in April, that when you were looking at the growth in active listings, the condo market was at an all-time high. But we were saying, hey, even in comparison to some of the other markets after adjustments, detached and the freehold market is not looking that bad. Like it really had kind of maintained, and really it wasn't until that August and July where we really kind of rolled over in terms of our second highest year there for active listings. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, the freehold stuff is just faring better in these types of markets.
Yeah, I mean, we've underbuilt it for so many years that it's a high. I think a lot of people come to Canada because they want to own their own home. They don't want to potentially live in a condo. So um, and when you come to Canada, it's Southern Ontario that typically you want to put your roots in,
Mhm.
and looking at Peel and then to GTA as a whole, you can see that there's still a lot of areas that are quite strong when it comes detached.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sales volume. So here's again where we see a big drop off in comparison to other years. So now we're looking at all the way back to 2018, how our sales volume typically pans out throughout the year. And 2025, we're starting near the bottom of that, right? We're just not there. And obviously, this start into February, this could change. This is just based on month to date so far. But I love that you highlighted here 2020, where we had that late spring push actually be in the summertime because of what had happened with COVID.
Yeah, I highlighted that for two reasons. One, for that, it was a COVID push. Everything got kind of pushed back because of the early beginning of the year with the pandemic. But also, when it comes to refinances this year, it won't be till
Mhm.
later in the year where all these people that purchased uh, homes will be refinancing. And in the GTA alone, we're almost around 10,000 there now, so you're maybe looking around 30,000 individuals that need to refinance. But I also did the May stats here to kind of potentially project of where we might have sales in the GTA. So we've got the second lowest amount of sales since 2018 in January. I think if we kind of follow that yellow line, the 2019, I think we'll be just a little bit below that, maybe. So maybe we're going to be in the 7,000 range for sales in the GTA come May, and I would imagine that's maybe where we're going to peak. I don't know, maybe we peak sooner, but I feel like the last 2 years we kind of peaked early in the year, where like a lot of stuff came a little bit quicker. Um, but I don't know. I kind of see from the data that maybe this is something that's going to be pushed further because of tariff news, tariff concerns. If that's going to happen in March, then maybe we'll see a May and a June push in the market as people adjust to what may or may not come of that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And it's, it's not unheard of that we have those later pushes. I mean, you can see the sales volume here was kind of on that trend. Obviously, 2020 a little bit different, but even here in 2023, peaking a little bit earlier, or maybe, sorry, 2022 peaking earlier, in 2021 peaking up here, and then it says as opposed to our later pushes. And if we look at 2019, again, they're peaking in May. So it fluctuates. I'd say that kind of that May to June in terms of overall sales volume is usually a safe bet, sometimes as early as April. But our average price does tend to be a little bit later in the spring as home transactions stack on top of each other, right? If we're in a positive growth market, we see that stack up, and that will be a little bit later. And that always comes down to a conversation with your sellers or homeowners that are wondering, they say, when's the best time to sell my house? And when you look at those stats, it does trend to be a little bit later, but that's just a stat. It has nothing to do with where you guys are, because there's total sales volume that makes the difference. But also, if you're going out there and we're comparing this to active listings, do you want to be the house out there when there's 10 others, 15 others in your direct neighborhood as opposed to 2 or 3? Like, that's the impact that could hurt your home price more so than any of this stuff, right? I think it's important that people remember that. Beautiful. Median sale price, looking at 2024 here, they, it's kind of, we got kind of a nice little leveling off with a little bit of an uptick there at the end.
Yeah, I think like we've started the January just above 23, 24, and 2021.
Yeah.
It does look like we might dip. It's still too early in February to tell where we're going to end up here. If it was to end today, we'd be down over the 2024 and 2023. I do think that number will probably climb pretty close to 2023 numbers. What's interesting about this chart is you've got the 3 years at the bottom and then the 4 years at the top. So you've got pre-COVID and then you've got COVID and above. And you can see that gap up from 2019, 2018, 2020, and then the gap up above that. It's just purely based on the amount of money that got driven into the economy, made the housing prices go higher. And then looking at 2022's peak out there, just the disconnect that it got from the market. And when you have super low interest rates, that's what happens. You get a rush of individuals that want to get into the housing market. But now we've come back to a range, and it'll be interesting to see if we can get over the 2023 price range. But my guess is, like I said, maybe between April and June is when we're going to peak out in the price and kind of see where this market for the GTA ends up.
Yeah, I mean, the forecast is still, I think, from the Toronto Real Estate Board, hovering around that 2.1, 2.2% growth is what they announced in their outlook. So we should be above that by year's end, and perhaps this spring that we're in might just be that little bit of doubt that doesn't quite carry through. Obviously, January we're seeing in a lot of ways didn't perform, perhaps where you may have bet, 3-4 months ago about what you thought January would have done. Obviously, the stuff happening in the south of us being the big impact there. And, a nice comment here from Stacy saying the same thing. I feel this way about 2025, a delay in sales with all that's happening. So maybe we do see that later push in regards to home sales. And the question will be, do we stack up? I think my question will be, do we stack up too many active listings for when the buyers actually return, that it might impact our sales price by the time that happens because of the buyer choice that we're seeing?
I think when we look at interest rates later in the episode,
in our deck here, yeah,
we're still in a fairly restrictive range as to where we've seen interest rates in the past. So, so surely there is a lot of people out there that have to ask themselves, and it might be mostly investors, can I afford to keep this secondary property right now? And I think that's what might keep the active in the new listings at a high.
Yeah. I mean, we have seen updates in terms of the forecast for the amount of cuts that we might see. That could be the difference maker